Hey awesome fans, me Megashark, and today I'm reacting to Dr. Bob's SCP when evil parents realize they're being caught. And also don't forget to subscribe, I would really appreciate it. So let's get to it.
Timmy screamed.
Oh my
His
goodness.
dad's eyes were filled with madness as his hand clamped around the
Oh
boy's
my
ankle.
gosh.
In his other hand, a hypodermic needle glinted as it caught the light.
Just stay still, Timmy,
he said,
Oh my
voice
gosh.
hoarse and threatening.
you owe this to the family.
Just down
Oh
the
my
hall,
gosh.
Mom watched with an evil smile. None of them had any idea about the ones running towards the house outside. Hours earlier,
hope
Timmy
it's
was
the,
trapped down in the darkness of the
hope
basement,
it's the
arms
SCP
bound.
agents
He remembered
come
having
and
a bed
rescue the
once.
kid.
They all had beds, their own rooms even. That was before the terrible change had come over Timmy's parents. Now his bed was little more than a thick piece of fabric in the corner of his cage, one of 4 installed in the basement, the
poor
kind designed
kid.
for large and aggressive dogs. Even if he had tools, he'd never be able to file through the bars, and that's exactly how his parents wanted it. There were terrible noises down in the basement, even when Mom and Dad weren't working down there. Timmy had siblings once, Johnny, Alice, and Elliot. It was insane to think it was only 2 years since they'd all lived a normal life. They'd gone to school, eaten 3 meals a day, gone on vacations, back when Mom and Dad still had their jobs at Prometheus Labs in the biogenetics department.
Something must have
But when
happened.
Prometheus collapsed, something changed.
Yeah.
Timmy's parents, once loving and jovial people who tucked them in every night and read them bedtime stories, became cold and distant. They'd stare off into space
That
most
is
days,
weird.
trance-like, sometimes ignoring Timmy and his siblings when they tried to talk to them. They stopped living and started sleepwalking through daily existence.
That's not
Timmy and the
good.
others had noticed that their parents would stay up late at night, arguing about bills. They went from 2 cars to 1, and then that car was exchanged for a far worse one. They stopped having branded food and started getting the Brand X alternative from supermarkets. They went from being
Ew.
understanding and patient to flying into yelling, screaming rages at any of the kids when they made even the tiniest mistake. Everything that
poor
had been so
kids.
beautiful and perfect had all turned to ash. And then the stranger in the suit arrived. All the siblings knew something was wrong when the man first arrived. He was like a human draft, a frigid wind blowing through their halls that chilled them all to the bone. The kids thought he looked like a vampire, pale and gaunt, with an expensive but oddly old-fashioned looking suit. He always carried a red leather briefcase with the letters MCD embroidered on it in gold. Whenever the stranger in the suit visited, the mom and dad would send the kids up to their rooms so they could discuss their mysterious business in private.
Gotta be
But how
kidding
could a
me.
child not be curious about this? They all listened in secret through the floors, catching snippets here and there.
You're sure this is the only way?
They heard Mom say. They strained to hear the reply, but the stranger in the suit always spoke softly, choosing his words with care and purpose. But there were fragments that traveled up and through the floor.
My employers firmly believe that children are the best for this. They're pliable, moldable, unburdened by a developed ideology.
Brother.
Timmy and the others had no idea what most of these words even meant, but something about them rang with a distinct sense of threat.
Yeah.
Then they heard their father, with a voice flat and serious, say,
And you can guarantee $1 million ahead if we keep our end of the deal?
a long pause. The stranger in the suit considered.
That depends on the quality of the mutations.
The stranger left after that and drove away in a car that the kids always thought looked like a luxury hearse. Their parents remained down in the kitchen for some time after that, talking.
I'm not sure.
dear.
We've had them for years.
They heard their father saying.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Their mother replied.
We could always have some more.
The day after that, Mom
my
and Dad
God.
changed again. They barely spoke to the kids at all, but they were smiling more. They spent most of their time in the basement.
This
All the
is
kids
so
knew
good.
that their parents were scientists in some way or other. Perhaps, the kids figured,
They-
they were working on some invention down there. They all held out the vain hope that if they did create some stupendous invention, maybe things could go back to the way they were before. Soon enough, they'd be proven wrong in the worst way. Mom and Dad started
They're
watching them all.
crazy.
the way someone might look at some insect pinned into place beneath a microscope. The kids started to feel paranoid, noticing now and then that while they were playing or watching TV, their mom or dad might be standing quietly somewhere behind them, looking through a doorway or peering around a corner, only to back away or disappear the second any of the kids noticed them.
That's really
They felt
creepy.
exposed, observed, like mom and dad weren't looking at them as loving parents, but
Nope.
as test subjects. And it wouldn't take long for this to become literal. It began during a tense family dinner. They used to be so lively, filled with conversation, or occasionally sitting in front of the TV together while eating. But for months now,
They're
they had
crazy
dinner
parents.
in silence.
Evil
The kids were made to
parents.
eat an unpleasant, thin gruel that would always leave them going to bed hungry. Johnny was the one who made the mistake of complaining, asking when they'd get real food again. Soon enough, Mom and Dad were screaming at him until they were trembling and crying in their chairs. He tried to apologize,
Oh my
try to
God.
beg for mercy, but nothing got through to Mom and Dad. Their father grabbed Johnny by the wrist and dragged him down to the basement, kicking
Oh my
and screaming.
gosh.
Johnny needed to be taught some manners. It would be the last time that any of them would see Johnny, well, as Johnny, ever again. But the rest of them would be getting the same treatment soon enough. One by one, something would send all of them down to the basement. Alice made the terrible mistake of asking for help with some of her math homework. It was hard to concentrate being hungry all the time. Mom smiled and said that, yes, of course she could help.
But it would be so much easier to focus down in the basement, wouldn't it?
Alice was terrified, but she didn't want to argue.
Poor
She saw
Alice.
how they treated Johnny. So she was a good, obedient little girl and was led down into the
Poor
basement
little
by
one.
Mom. When she saw what was
Poor
already down
baby.
there, she screamed. But she didn't scream for long. Elliot was next. He didn't do anything, not really. They didn't even give him any time to think. Mom and Dad woke him up in the middle of the night and told him to come downstairs. They had the most amazing surprise to show him. And in the more neutral sense of the word amazing, as in to produce shock and awe, then they were telling him the truth for once. Elliot was let down into the basement like the others, and then Timmy was basically an only child. He wouldn't stay topside forever. Of course he wouldn't,
No.
as much as he would have liked living in that comforting lie. They didn't even bother to make up an excuse in the end, just told him to come down to the basement to see how his siblings were, in their word, progressing. Timmy crept down the long, dark stairs into the basement, hearing strange and
boy.
terrible sounds down there. Then the lights came on. Timmy's heart almost stopped in his chest, seeing
What
them,
did he do?
seeing what they'd become,
What did they do? to
knowing
them?
on some level what they would never be again.
Yeah.
Johnny, and Timmy knew it was Johnny because each cage had their names on a small piece of card, had been turned into a squat, drooling creature. His skin was concrete
Sibling.
gray, his back covered in long, protruding bone spikes,
Sibling.
like the quills of a porcupine. They'd
Oh my
turned Alice into
gosh.
something impossible. Her skin had turned to molten lava rock, crisscrossed with glowing veins, floating slightly off the ground. Her hands were pom-poms
I feel
of fire,
sorry for
radiating
them.
light and heat, like some hellish parody of a cheerleader. He could even see flames in her eyes, fluttering out from behind her teeth. And in the question of animal, vegetable, or mineral, Elliot had changed category. Mom and Dad's
Oh my
experiments had turned him
gosh.
into a green, leafy creature with blooming flowers like antennas instead of eyes. The rest of him was a skein of vines, each one covered in hundreds of sharp-edged thorns.
Those poor
At the end of the
kids.
row was an empty cage, one that had a card with Timmy's name written on it. And it wasn't long before Timmy
Oh,
was
boy.
inside it, bound by zip ties and helpless. As the nights passed, his parents
Oh,
worked in
go
their basement
away.
laboratory on the anomalous mutagen that would steal his humanity away. All Timmy could do was look at what his siblings had become. Johnny, the spiny beast, Alice, the fiery demon, and Elliot, the twisting, weaving plant creature. Timmy knew that he would need to escape and reveal the terrible evil that his parents had committed against them all. He needed
Yeah.
to live and stay human. Mom and Dad were working hard, using some technology they'd borrowed from the Prometheus Lab's headquarters before the whole thing had come tumbling down. They worked
my
on
goodness.
synthesizing a compound that would change him into a truly dangerous monster. And all they would need to do is inject it into his body with a hypodermic needle.
I hope the
It was
the
early one
agents
morning when
save
Dad,
him.
holding said needle, approached the cage. Mom hung back a little and smiled,
Hope the,
thinking of
fun-
money. Are you going to be a good little boy for Dad, Timmy?
Him.
He said, reaching down for the cage's lock with his free hand. Timmy forced a smile and nodded.
Good boy,
Mom said.
much more docile than the others.
But Timmy knew something they didn't. He'd spent the last few nights slowly chewing through the zip ties on his wrists and holding them together to make it look like everything was moving according to their plans. The second the cage door opened, Timmy lunged out, punching his dad in the groin with all of his strength. He ran up the stairs and out of the basement while his dad folded like a lawn chair. By the time he was 3/4 of the way up the stairs, he heard footsteps thundering behind him. Which brings us back to where we began. Timmy, adrenalized and terrified, trying to kick his way free as his father grabbed him around the ankle, trying to pull him back, preparing the hypodermic syringe in his spare hand. To Timmy, it didn't even look like his father anymore. He was a wild-eyed demon, skin beaded with nervous sweat.
Just stay still, Timmy,
he said, voice hoarse and threatening.
You owe this to the family. This is going to make us rich. You can't ruin it. Especially after everything we and your mother have sacrificed for you.
Dad was squeezing his ankle so hard he could almost feel the future bruise forming. Timmy tried to struggle free, but his dad was bringing the needle closer and closer. He could see his mother step into the hallway to watch.
Just let it happen, Timmy,
she said.
You won't even remember who you were after this.
Timmy wouldn't cry. He wouldn't beg. He'd done all that already, and he knew it wouldn't help him now, as the needle was inches away from his skin. If his parents had any soul left to appeal to, they never would have been able to do all this, to him or any of his siblings. All Timmy could do now was fight. In the last possible moment, Timmy reared up and with all his strength kicked the father's hand, knocking the needle back into his father's own body. The monstrous man froze in shock, and Timmy wasted no time lunging forward, striking the plunger on the back of the needle and injecting the entire contents into his dad's body. Further down the hall, his mom screamed. Timmy's dad reared back in pain, letting go of Timmy's leg, his jaw clenched and every vein in his neck standing proud.
Timmy, run!
His skin started to turn an inflamed red and began to darken as the change took hold. Mom ran forward and tried to grab her husband by the shoulders, but he bucked back and knocked her to the ground. His clothes began to rip as his body bulged and contorted into nightmarish proportions. Claws and fangs busted out of his flesh, along with meaty tendrils and spasming insect legs. He let out howling animal screams, first from the agony of the transformation, and then because his darkly brilliant plan started to turn to mush in his mutating head. And Timmy was filled with horror, not just at the sight of it, but at knowing this was so very nearly his fate. But there was no time to sit and watch. Timmy ran up to the front door and tugged on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. He struggled at the mechanism as he turned to see the monster that was once his father and his rage-filled mother barging down the hall towards him. All he could do was dodge out of the way and run into the nearby living room, just to put some space between him and them. His father was still howling out his monstrous roar, and his mother, spitting with rage, was screaming,
You worthless, terrible boy! You ungrateful monster!
Timmy narrowly dodged the whipping of his father's tendrils. His mother had pulled out a .38 snub-nosed revolver and started firing it erratically around the room, thankfully at least too enraged to aim with any real accuracy. But there was no other way out of the living room. His terrible parents had cornered him here. He could feel his father's many-clawed limbs reaching out for him as his mother lined up another shot. And then, a fireball hit his father's mutant body, lighting up his back in flame. Timmy turned with astonishment to see that Alice was there in the doorway, her brimstone body glowing with energy. Her eyes burned with rage as she summoned up another fireball in her hand.
Don't hurt him,
she forced out through a mouthful of embers. The monster father, still burning, turned and began loping towards Alice, knocking her back into the hall. Mom panicked and began trying to drag the monster that was once her husband away from their anomalous daughter.
No,
Mom yelled.
That's $1 million there.
But before Dad could bear down upon Alice fully, he was suddenly pincushioned by a barrage of bone spikes. Johnny, who crawled up into the hall, was letting out monstrous screeches. It seemed that Timmy's siblings had remembered more of who they once were than he or his parents had once believed. They were banding together to prevent Timmy from sharing their fate. But there was still one more sibling to go. The entire ground rumbled and collapsed under his mother's feet as the thorn-covered vines of Elliot unraveled up around her and clung into her skin. She screamed in pain as the vines got tighter and tighter, expressing every moment of rage and agony that his evil parents had put him through.
You ruined everything! You worthless little brat!
Timmy's mother screamed and pointed the revolver at Timmy.
No, Timmy,
A gunshot rang out, but not from Mom. A bullet had flown with expert precision through the living room window, knocking the revolver from Mom's hand. She was so shocked that she seemed distracted from the thorny vines piercing her skin, and that shock only escalated when men in SWAT gear smashed through the front door with a battering ram and repelled in through the living room window. Dad reared up in all his terrible monstrosity and tried to attack the interlopers. They gave a counter-argument in hot lead, going full auto and shredding the monster that Dad had become with sustained gunfire. Mom screamed in horror at the sight of it as the SWAT operatives grabbed her and dragged her out of the hole in the ground where the thorny tendrils receded. The men slammed her against the wall and handcuffed her as she screamed and protested her innocence. More and more of these armored tactical soldiers ran into the home, using specialized tech to subdue not only Mom, but the anomalous children too. One of the men walked up to Timmy, who was understandably confused and terrified about this, and lifted up the visor on his tactical helmet.
Don't worry, kid, the man said. We're the good guys. You're gonna be safe now.
Everything after that was a blur. The Foundation contained all the children, arrested Mom, and dragged out Dad's mutated body to be dissected, studied, and later burned. After removing all the equipment from the basement and discovering the full extent of Mom and Dad's correspondence with the stranger in the suit, the whole horrible truth came to light. The Foundation had seized and shut down Prometheus Labs, a long-running Foundation group of interest that had pioneered anomalous science and technology for decades. Mom and Dad had been two of the lab's most promising new scientists, spearheading the new biogenetics division, only to have their lives ripped away from them. Details of Prometheus Lab's former employees had been purchased by representatives of Marshall, Carter, and Dark Limited, a sprawling, anomalous enterprise composed of auction houses, exclusive private clubs, and an equity division. They contacted Mom and Dad, and they made an arrangement. If Mom and Dad could transform their 4 children into powerful and dangerous anomalies, Marshall, Carter, and Dark Limited would buy them at a high price and turn them into super soldiers before selling them off to the highest bidder. And they would have succeeded, too, had a Foundation mole embedded in the nefarious corporation had not intercepted some of their communications in the nick of time. If this hadn't happened exactly when it did, Mom and Dad likely would have become very wealthy people. Alice, Johnny, and Elliot, the 3 children who were changed, are still in Foundation containment, undergoing mental rehabilitation after the trauma they'd suffered at their parents' hands. Due to their anomalous nature, they will never be allowed to leave Foundation containment. Timmy was a little luckier than that. Because he wasn't in any way anomalous, the Foundation was able to debrief him and then give him amnestic treatment. As far as Timmy knows, his parents died in an accident, and he's always been an only child. He now lives with some distant relatives in a different school in a town far from his own. He will live a normal life. And with Dad dead, you may be wondering what became of Mom in the end. Given that she wasn't anomalous in nature, the Foundation had no reason to contain her, as they were doing with all the mutated children. She wouldn't be leaving the containment site either, though. She's now started her life as a member of D-Class personnel. And next week, she'll be getting her first assignment, some cross-testing with SCP-106, the Old Man. For an evil parent caught in an act of ultimate cruelty, we can't think of a more appropriate fate. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like she bought a Labubu doll. What happened?
That's a good happy ending. Sorry, emotions. Okay, I'll do another one. I can do... What else I want to do? I could do the Minecraft one.
A menacing figure emerges from the fog, striding across the low poly blocky terrain. He moves with unnatural speed towards me, arms outstretched. At first glance, he almost seems like a default player skin, the classic Steve, with those eyes, gray, soulless, a dead man stare. The name above his head confirms it. Herobrine. He lunges, his death grip inches from me. I slam the Foundation terminal's kill switch. The screen cuts to black, leaving me alone with my racing heartbeat, the sweat on my skin, and the memory of those eyes. I remember my supervisor saying, "Good work, junior researcher Bob. Impressive reflexes. But we need you back in there before anybody else gets hurt." Believe it or not, back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, this was how I spent some of my first years at the SCP Foundation. Since the internet exploded worldwide, the SCP Foundation Cyber Anomalies Division has been working overtime. Turns out, connecting most of planet Earth wirelessly leads to a lot of negative anomalous mojo getting supercharged too. And nobody knows this better than someone playing Minecraft. To the untrained eye, Minecraft would seem perfectly harmless. This sandbox block-building game, known for its charming aesthetic, endless creativity, and superb soundtrack, feels like the furthest thing from the kind of anomalous nightmares I usually share on this channel. But any actual Minecraft player would immediately tell you that you're wrong. Dead wrong. Ever since the game's public alpha dropped back in May 17, 2009, Minecraft's many servers have been an extraordinary hub of anomalous activity. Something about the mix of deep player emotional investment and the procedurally generated nature of the world gives Minecraft its own psychosphere. This has given rise to many strange and disturbing events that have caught the attention of the SCP Foundation over the years. But back then, even I, as a junior researcher, had no idea that the horrors could follow me out of the game. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. During my days researching anomalies in Minecraft, days that would forever ruin my enjoyment of the game, I encountered the truth behind several terrifying myths that have plagued the community for over a decade now. And it only makes sense that we begin with my encounter with Herobrine. If you've clicked on this, chances are you're already familiar with this elusive Minecraft monster. It began appearing in empty servers as early as the first Minecraft beta, modifying player constructions and creating a general sense of unease. I encountered Herobrine several times during my earliest explorations of the game under the Foundation's command, and every time it escaped into the mist, save for the one time it attempted to attack me. Perhaps the most famous encounter with the Herobrine entity was the legendary 2010 Copeland stream. The Foundation was able to keep this incident under wraps until its eventual leak in 2024. The YouTuber's frightening encounter with this digital ghost is the stuff of nightmares, and it reminded me of my own close calls. Perhaps the most frightening detail was a file uncovered during the stream that has since forever been associated with the Herobrine myth. Well, the myth part is what the Foundation wants you to believe anyway. The file reads as follows. It has been reported that some victims of torture during the act would retreat into a fantasy world from which they could not wake up. In this catatonic state, the victim lived in a world just like their normal one, except they weren't being tortured. The only way that they realized they needed to wake up was a note found in their fantasy world which would tell them about their condition. Even then, it would often take months before they were ready to discard their fantasy world and please wake up. And of course, the significance of this is still being researched years later. Every time I encountered Herobrine in the game, there was an unavoidable sense that I was being watched, and not just within the confines of the game. It was almost as though there was a presence standing in the dark corner of the room behind me, so tangible it could reach out and put its hand on my shoulder. But that couldn't be possible, could it? The most common explanation for Herobrine and the myths around his existence is that he's the spirit of the Minecraft creator Notch's dead brother. Notch has, of course, vehemently denied that he even had a brother, a fact that he might even actually believe after all of the amnestic treatment the Foundation gave him following the first smattering of Herobrine incidents. Come on, it's hardly the most severe thing the Foundation has ever done to preserve consensus normality. But Herobrine was only one of the scary supposed myths of Minecraft that I encountered when playing the game as a junior researcher. In one game, while exploring the fiery basalt delta, I went head-to-head with an anomalous creature known to fans of Minecraft as Null. This frightening mob anomaly crawled in through the cracks of JavaScript, and I remembered it chasing me across plains dripping with deadly magma, psychically manipulating multiple weapons that it used against me. Superficially, Null is a featureless entity with the vague shape of a player character, except with a completely black body and the same white eyes as Herobrine. Null's ability to inflict damage has caused serious problems for Minecraft players, most of which have thankfully never actually encountered the real Null while playing. And those who have encountered the real Null often require immediate medical attention afterwards.
Oh my gosh.
That's because when Null inflicts damage on player avatars, the players have reported receiving cuts and bruises on their actual body. And while Null hasn't yet been connected to a lethal case, the Foundation has often feared that if he's left unchecked, it's only a matter of time before tragedy strikes. I experienced these wounds firsthand while battling Null, even when my avatar had diamond armor and a diamond sword, some of the most durable in the game. Luckily, before I sustained too many real-life wounds, I was able to use a few well-considered hits to knock Null back into the magma, where it quickly died. This so far has been the most effective method of containing the anomaly, the whack-a-mole method of finding and killing him anew every time he appears. It's undeniably not the most efficient method imaginable, but right now, it's the best we've got. On an even more bizarre note, there's the alleged killer bunny that's been cited in some servers. It's about the size of a regular rabbit in the game, but has an eerie red smear around its unusually pointy fangs. I'll leave to your imagination what exactly that is. Perhaps the result of some strange trickster entity, I encountered this creature while exploring the many woods and forests that Minecraft has to offer, only to be shocked by its aggression. The killer rabbit tore through the forest at truly anomalous speeds, slaughtering its fellow mobs in the shade of the trees. I hung back and watched the carnage unfold, a violence that seemed out of place in an otherwise all-ages-friendly game. A background check from my superiors revealed that the rabbit was never coded into the game. It was a strange, randomly occurring anomaly that appeared in servers to furiously attack anything unlucky enough to encounter it, almost like some amazing digital cryptid. And of course, after it had finished killing the mobs, it noticed me and attacked. Thankfully, the killer rabbit is, in tactical terms, a glass cannon. That means while it has impressive offensive capabilities, it has pitiful defensive specs. It's every bit as easy to kill as your standard in-game rabbit. Easily dispatching the killer rabbit with my diamond sword felt like a breath of fresh air after all the difficulties of battling Null. It also came with the added benefit of not leaving me bruised and bashed. Always a bonus. Seeing as the killer rabbit doesn't have nearly the same capacity of physical harm as Null, the Foundation's efforts have instead been focused on keeping its anomalous nature from becoming known to the public. In order to assure this, the Foundation has worked with Mojang to create a non-anomalous variant of the killer rabbit that could be added to any Minecraft server with a command. Then, when anyone was unlucky enough to encounter the actual killer rabbit, they would make the fair assumption that it was just another mob that somebody had spawned into the server for fun. Fun is the furthest thing from the next frightening thing I encountered during my Minecraft investigations. Well, unless you are the anomaly itself, which loves having fun at the expense of other players' misery. And yes, in this case I do say other players, because this isn't just some ghost in the machine. It's a vengeful Mojang employee who has since aligned himself with the Chaos Insurgency to enter the game and use anomalous technology to wreak havoc on others, making him, perhaps, the ultimate griefer. And he goes by the name Entity 303. This immediately recognizable player avatar wears a white hooded parka and seems to have complete mastery over the game and its code. He enters other people's Minecraft servers and wreaks terrible destruction for his own amusement, releasing frightening anomalous mobs. Some Foundation researchers, myself included, have even entertained the idea that he might have somehow been behind the creation of the killer rabbit and Null. But that's only the beginning of the potential damage he can do to innocent players just trying to have fun and be creative. On the more mild end of the frightening possibilities, those who have had their carefully constructed worlds decimated by Entity 303 have reported extremely distressing nightmares in the days and weeks that followed. Images of real-life mass destruction, warfare, natural disasters, mass slaughters, dreams that give their dreamers legitimate trauma upon waking, making them feel isolated and socially distant from their peers. On the more extreme end, there have been reports of Entity 303 making deals with players in exchange for not destroying their Minecraft worlds. These deals give Entity 303 a limited capacity for mind control over its unfortunate victims, often allowing them to commit highly destructive acts in the real world. The researcher that preceded me on the Minecraft case actually fell victim to this. They had to be arrested and given amnestic treatment when he tried requisitioning Foundation files on behalf of the Chaos Insurgency. Thankfully, my own encounter with Entity 303 was much more weighted in my favor, seeing as, at that point, other researchers had discovered its aversion to ender pearls. Using these pearls, I was able to force him out of the server I was in before he could engage in his primary anomaly effects. But there's one so-called myth that's more dangerous and frightening than all the others combined, and be warned, because once you hear about it, you'll never look at Minecraft the same way ever again. As my long night alone in the Foundation IT lounge wound on, I found myself experiencing a growing sense of unease. Understandable, really, given everything that I already knew was out there lurking beyond the blocks. And all of this got so much worse when I entered the Kane Mansion. I doubt you've heard of this particular Minecraft anomaly because chances are, if you had, you wouldn't be watching this video today. While exploring a server with a number of reported anomalous phenomena, I discovered the so-called mansion up in the Stony Peaks biome, a temperate range of stone hills far from the plains where most players would build their houses and forts. It did not, on the face of it, appear to be a mansion at all, little more than a cozy-looking hut made of wood and stone. Though my curiosity was piqued by a pair of signs outside that said, Kane Mansion, you'll never want to leave. Things immediately took a turn for the strange when I entered the building, soon discovering that it was far more than the facade would have you believe. The player who'd built this place clearly attended the TARDIS School of Interior Design. The building was far more palatial on the inside. In a manner that recalled my studies of House of Leaves back in college, the interior dimensions of the building were far larger than seemed possible, given the dimensions of the outer walls. But this wasn't necessarily anomalous. In theory, a clever coder could achieve such a distortion of Minecraft reality. But it was still my duty while on the clock to keep exploring any potential bizarre sites in these flagged servers, so I explored further. The structure was built deep into the mountain, and I traced down an elaborate spiral staircase, lit by simple torch sconces down into the blocky abyss below. I had no idea just what terrible things would be waiting for me down there. I traveled down the staircase for a solid 5.5 minutes without event. I could only assume that the passage was so long to deter any players who weren't being paid to explore by a secretive organization, but seeing as I was, I wouldn't be so easily thrown off. However, as I got deeper, I began to experience a strange sense of unease. Perhaps you felt this way while playing Minecraft before. An odd anxiety that seems almost as though it's coming from outside of your body, being opposed upon you by some external force that's as unknowable as it is alien. It's a feeling that's been widely reported by Minecraft players over the years, and I can safely say that I felt it at that moment. Nevertheless, I persisted, and soon I'd regret it. At the bottom of the Kane Mansion staircase, I found what I can only describe as a ritual torture chamber, far outside what should have been possible in the game. It was a vast hall filled with large cages, each one packed with player avatars, but each one seemed old and thin, as though they'd been trapped in these subterranean cages where they'd been starved and tortured for years on end. But at the end of the gangway of cages filled with damned Minecraft souls was something that was even worse. It was a huge nether portal, except instead of the typical purple glow inside the giant obsidian square, the energy exuding out of the portal was blood red. When I entered the room, the portal began to glow brighter than before, and the caged players erupted into a chorus of pained moans. Everything in me was telling me to exit the room immediately, but my controls disengaged. My player avatar was stuck there, forced to bear mute witness to whatever was going to come out of that nether portal. And then, something did. Perhaps it was an Enderman once, the semi-infamous, intentionally spooky mob added as the nod to the Slenderman mythos, known for their eerie design and uncanny movements. But this wasn't the mere collection of polygons you could expect from a typical Minecraft mod. The Enderman that crawled out of the blood-red nether portal looked like something out of a photograph, a long, loping nightmare with coal-black skin and piercing purple eyes. It crawled out of the portal with
It's not a
unnatural
normal
fluidity,
endo.
its body moving like a marionette with a drunken puppeteer. It loped and shuffled away from the base of the
It's not a
portal,
normal
moving directly
endo.
towards my avatar with an urgency that I could only describe as ravenous. I couldn't move. I couldn't select a weapon. My controls were completely unresponsive.
Yeah.
But that feeling of invading anxiety heightened by the second, the kind of fight-or-flight mechanism normally reserved for real physical threats, not an enemy attacking your character in a video game.
Yeah.
As the hyper-realistic Enderman was almost upon my avatar, I involuntarily reached for the kill switch and turned off the computer. Never before had I felt such a truly profound sense of relief. A voice from the speaker up in the corner said,
"Your trigger finger is a little too eager for our taste, Junior Researcher Bob. How can we expect to study and contain these things if you exit out before we can even begin our tests?"
I was sliding an excuse into the cylinder and preparing to pull back the hammer when the computer sparked back to life. But it was neither a continuation of the scene before, nor the blue startup screen that my computer typically defaults to after I hit the kill switch. No, it was that same swirling crimson that I'd seen below the Kane mansion. My monitor had the exact same configuration as the obsidian blocks. My screen had turned into a nether portal.
Oh, dear.
I almost wouldn't have believed it until a lithe black hand with a grasping claw reached out of the screen towards me, stretching out and out and out. Falling backwards in shock and knocking over my chair, I scrambled back towards the wall to put some distance between myself and the monster lumbering out of my computer screen like some twisted parody of birth. I could feel guards trying to bust down the exterior door and get in, but it was no use. We were in the Enderman's game now. Once it was fully out of the computer, the monster shook the thin red liquid off itself and rose shakily to its full height. It towered over me, pinning me to the wall with its shadow. Its skin looked charred, its proportions stretched and unnatural, and from its lumpy, lopsided head, those piercing amethyst eyes stared with deadly intent. As I cowered in the corner, it reached towards me, its hand fizzing and cracking with an aura of purple arcane energy. I couldn't say for sure what would happen if it touched me, but I knew instinctively to fear it. The same way the mouse fears the cat's jaws, and the housefly fears the sticky strands of the spider's web. It let out a terrible Enderman shriek as it prepared to grab my face, but it seemed that Notch was on my side that day. The guards managed to open the door in the nick of time. They trained their handguns on the thing and peppered it with bullets, knocking it back and soon reducing it to little more than a spray of dark purple vapor. A single emerald fell onto the ground where it was destroyed. I keep it on my desk to this day, as a memento of my first brush with death while working at the Foundation. That's the kind of thing you get a little sentimental about when you reach my age, which is surprisingly rare for an active duty agent at the SCP Foundation. I haven't been able to play Minecraft since that day, too many painful memories. But for any of you out there still mining and crafting to this day, a word of caution. Be sure to keep your wits about you while you're exploring strange servers. You never know what might follow you back out. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go.
What I was going to say about that, that's not a normal Enderman, because if it was, and it wouldn't be a emerald came out of it. It would have been Endo Pearl that would have came out of it. So I was gonna do this one.
Just one more slice. That's what researcher Johnson says to himself. It's the 15th he's had today, the equivalent of 3 whole pizzas. But how can you not? And Site 17 has the incredible offer of limitless pizza. It's raised morale here, when every day comes with the risk of getting massacred, mutilated, or transformed by creatures or cursed objects beyond comprehension. Knowing that during lunch, you can have your favorite pizza really takes the edge off. And
He
researcher
ate too
Johnson is far
much.
from alone in this. He looks around the cafeteria and sees the bloated researchers
Oh my
and
gosh.
guards stuffed on stuffed crust, sucking the grease off their fingers after packing in way too many slices of pepperoni or,
This-
controversially,
oh my gosh.
ham and pineapple. Johnson's boss, Dr. Julie Schnatter, waddles over to him. Despite trying to maintain professional composure in her slick pantsuit, adjusting her fashionable glasses with faintly marinara-stained fingers, she's clearly
Oh my
just
goodness.
housed another two of her favorite Detroit-style deep dish pizzas. She was sporting the shirt-button straining food baby to show for it. It seemed that ever since the new limitless pizza provision had been introduced at Site 17, all the staff, at every level, have been getting a lot rounder. When she swallows her mouthful of bread,
That's
cheese, and
too
mushroom,
big.
Dr. Schnatter starts giving researcher Johnson some
meant-
new emergency
you know what I
instructions.
meant.
He needs to go and do some
too much.
tests on SCP-352, who'd been showing some unusual new patterns of behavior lately. In the haze of meat sweats and mild indigestion, researcher Johnson can't exactly remember what SCP that is. But
Oh
he's a
my
people
gosh.
pleaser and knows it'd be a bad look to ask his boss to refresh him on the details. Dr. Schnatter thanked him for being so cooperative before leaving to get another few slices of pizza. A button popped off her blouse from the strain, as though preemptively making room for what was to
that
come.
on her
With
belly
considerable
button?
effort, researcher Johnson heaved himself out of his chair and trudged out of the mess hall, fondly remembering how delicious today's stuffed crust meat feast pizza had been. He could hardly remember ever enjoying this job so much. It had been the best decision that the site directors had ever made, installing that new pizza-based anomaly in the cafeteria. Why couldn't they find more fun, tasty
Oh,
anomalies
boy.
like that, rather than all the scary ones that loved killing people? These chased the
I
question
think
of what
this is the bad
SCP-352
one,
was
too.
out of his mind again. The food here is so good that he doesn't mind how much weight he's put on. Even if his steps are slower and heavier now, it's not like it makes him any less of a competent researcher. Same
Oh,
as his
boy.
boss. Julie's gone up 5 dress sizes, and she's just as meticulous as ever. Maybe they're the highest performing containment site out there, if they did
This is
tests
so
on that kind
good.
of thing. His Homer Simpson-esque musings came to a halt when he reached the door of SCP-352's containment chamber, swiped his keycard, and walked inside. He was thinking about
Oh,
what pizza
boy.
he might be able to manifest tomorrow. Maybe Italian sausage, chicken and mushrooms, perhaps anchovies if he's feeling dangerous. The thought must be making his stomach rumble. Until he realizes that's not his stomach that he's hearing.
Oh,
Researcher
boy.
Johnson turns and sees a figure moving quickly towards him from the corner of the room, a desiccated old hag with long, gnarled fingers and burning eyes. She knocked him to the ground before he could even scream and loomed over him, drool dripping from her
Hello.
fangs.
Oh, you're a plump one.
She said in a dead language.
Lucky me.
Oh,
And
boy.
that's how researcher Johnson, in his last moments, remembered what exactly SCP-352 was.
Yeah.
It was Baba Yaga, the ancient,
Baba
flesh-eating
Yaga.
Slavic witch. Some anomalies are reviled, some anomalies are feared, and a
Yeah.
small handful of anomalies are universally beloved. SCP-458, also known as the Never-Ending Pizza Box, is one of those elite and rarefied anomalies. It's exactly what it sounds like, a large Little
Yeah.
Caesars hot and ready pizza box that develops an empathic connection with anyone using it. When you open the box, it will give you whatever kind of pizza you'd love most, and when you close it again, it will simply work the same way in perpetuity. And this isn't limited to Little Caesars brand pizza, or pizza that has been previously created. Imagination and digestibility are seemingly the only limits, as the pizza box won't produce something that can't actually be eaten. We discovered this when Dr. Clef's request for a pizza topped with Glock 40s was seemingly rejected. Dr. Clef attempted to then physically destroy the pizza box with no success. It turned out that the box is completely indestructible, much to the relief of pizza lovers everywhere. It seems believable that the box might even be sentient,
Oh, boy.
given the knowledge
Yeah,
it seems to hold
I'd
about
say
people's
it
pizza
is.
preferences, even down to the most minute details. I'm aware of what you're thinking. To quote a famous advertising campaign, where's the beef? What's the heart of this
Huh?
anomaly that makes it worth an explanation
Oh.
in this full video? Personally, it's a fascinating series of test logs where SCP-458 was tested on a number of anomalies and staff members to see what would be
Yeah.
the ideal kind of pizza they'd manifest. Almost like a kind of stuffed crust Rorschach test. So without further
Yeah.
ado, let's take a look, shall we? It was first tested on SCP-040, an anomaly known as Evolution's Child. This pink-haired little girl has tremendous reality-warping abilities to manifest different living creatures out of organic matter, the result of human experiments at a CIA project intended to grant children superpowers. And in this case, the powers bestowed upon SCP-040, also known as Emma, are literally godlike. But you may still be wondering, what would be her ideal pizza? That's what the researchers in this case were eager to find out. The answer was a commendable small pizza with extra cheese and a stuffed crust, which Emma considered a peace offering after a distressing incident where the Foundation tried to make her reanimate a human corpse, which she did not particularly enjoy. Then there's SCP-049, an anomaly known as the Plague Doctor. He's one of the more fascinating entities in Foundation custody to me personally, a self-professed man of medical science fighting a mysterious and deadly illness known as the pestilence for the sake of humankind. And yet his ways of dealing with that pestilence feel downright ineffective and, for lack of a better word, evil. His touch kills, and once someone has died from his deadly touch, he uses his own unique pseudo-medical methods to bring them back from the dead as terrifying, deformed zombies. Only at this point does the Plague Doctor consider his patients truly cured of the pestilence. But what would be his favorite kind of pizza? That's the question that really haunts us. In terms of his current diet, 049 enjoys what you'd expect of a medieval French physician: bread, beef, and hard cheese, though he doesn't physiologically need to eat, he just does it for pleasure. However, when it came to pizza that expressed his deepest, innermost desires, he got a little more fancy with it. He went for a small pizza in the French bread style, thin crust with thinly sliced onions and extra olives. What, can't a man of science enjoy himself now and then? Wanting to test the moral limits of the never-ending pizza box, a sentence that you'd only find in a discussion about the SCP Foundation, the researchers tried to test the pizza box on SCP-082, a large, pathologically lying humanoid known as Fernand the Cannibal. Yes, you can probably already see where this is going. The deep dish Chicago-style pizza that was produced did indeed prove to contain human flesh as a topping. However, the flesh, strangely, did not have any DNA markers that would link it back to any individual person. This confirmed that the limits really do only seem to be digestibility, not legality. However, the lack of traceable DNA markers in the human flesh on the pizza implies that nobody was hurt in the process of the pizza's creation. It may even be a way to sustainably feed the Foundation's obligate anthropophages without needing to cause unnecessary deaths among D-Class personnel. And in case you were wondering, Fernand, who claimed that he was, in fact, Gordon Ramsay at the time, said that he thoroughly enjoyed the pizza, despite being in the persona of such a tough critic. Being extremely opinionated is one thing. The Foundation was curious as to whether the anomaly would be affected by being used by entities that aren't famous for having free will of their own. Could the pizza box discover the wants of an anomaly that, in theory, doesn't want? This was why the Foundation used SCP-662, the butler's handbell, to summon Mr. Deeds, an impeccably mannered supernatural butler who will carry out any command given to him to the best of his considerable ability. When he was given the pizza box, he paused for a brief period before being instructed to open the box. When he did, the contents was a thin-crust margarita pizza, which Mr. Deeds expressed no real opinion on. It turned out that this was actually the favorite pizza of the researcher who instructed Mr. Deeds to open the box in the first place. This showed that in the absence of desire, the external intent that willed Mr. Deeds to open the box was the one that became the target of the box's telepathic effects. But what about SCP-056, an anomaly ironically codenamed a beautiful person? For anyone unfamiliar, the specialty of this anomaly is essentially mogging everyone around it. It's a polymorphic entity that becomes a slightly better version of anyone or anything it's placed next to, seemingly purely out of spite. And you'd think that it would become a somehow better version of SCP-458 rather than just selecting a pizza. However, it seems that this is ultimately impossible because SCP-458 is the absolute best version of what it is. So instead, it made a relatively simple order: a medium pizza with sliced bell peppers, a thin crust, and Alfredo sauce. This makes SCP-458 one of the only anomalies to humble the thoroughly narcissistic SCP-056. But what would be a biblically good pizza? In order to find out, The researchers on the SCP-458 case decided to test the pizza box on Cain and Abel to see what these legendarily acrimonious brothers could be united by a taste in pizza.
Yep.
First came Cain, the first murderer, who has metal limbs, reflects damage he suffers onto others, and causes any plant life he touches to instantly wither and die. He's forever weighed down by the guilt of what he did to his brother and the dark mark of God himself for having stained the hands of mankind with blood. So what kind of pizza would a man like that enjoy? As it turns out, a medium pizza with feta and jack cheese, no sauce, and a thin crust. However, he never actually got to eat the pizza. In a tragic outcome that mimics the Greek tale of Tantalus, it withered in his hands, much like any regular plant life in response to Cain's metal touch. But what about Abel, Cain's brother, and the first murder victim, who then decided to create many, many more murder victims over the thousands of years of his life? Abel is a 7-foot-tall, hyper-aggressive warrior with superlative combat skills and the ability to manifest weapons out of nowhere, which he's historically used both in service of and against the SCP Foundation.
Yep.
But if he could manifest a pizza out of thin air, what would it be? Turns out, he'd request a pizza truly fitting of a warrior of his stature. A large, thick-crust pizza whose toppings include meatballs, pepperoni, bacon, Canadian bacon, sausage, and hamburger.
That looks so good.
I'm admittedly feeling a little hungry just describing that.
Yeah,
I don't say this often, but good choice, Abel. Speaking of anomalies who have been historically exploited as living tools and weapons by the SCP Foundation, the box was also tested on SCP-105, also known as Iris. This is a young girl able to have anomalous interactions with photographs. In short, she's able to reach through them as though they're a portal and interact directly with the subjects of the photographs in a fashion similar to so-called sympathetic magic. This has led to some undeniably disturbing consequences, where the Foundation attempted to make Iris use her power to perform assassinations against people of interest on their behalf. Naturally, Iris wasn't amenable to that idea, but she was amenable to getting to select the pizza that reflected her innermost desires. She requested a small, thin-crust, wheat-based pizza with olives. What can we say? The girl has simple tastes. They also decided to give a pizza to SCP-108-1, an African-American woman whose nasal cavity contains a portal to a different dimension, but is other than that completely non-anomalous and physiologically regular. Remaining consistent with how normal she is, other than the alternate dimension in her nose, she had a very normal pizza order too, a large, thick-crust pepperoni pizza. But what about when you give the pizza to creatures that are definitively not human? That was a valuable test that the Foundation could conduct with SCP-166, a teenage nature goddess with reindeer-like features. When she's standing within 15 meters of any object, those objects will slowly work their way back into their most natural state. Complex constructed objects will eventually return to the raw material that created them. And yes, because we know you're wondering, she requested a small, thin-crust oregano pizza with no sauce. However, after consuming it, she complained about stomach discomfort and nausea for the following 20 hours. Everybody's a critic, I suppose. Some people, on the other hand, are a lot luckier in life than SCP-166, such as SCP-181, a former D-Class known as Lucky, because he has the uncanny ability to siphon the luck from those around them and utilize it himself. In other words, while things will go well for him, everyone around him will have terrible luck. He had a large pepperoni and sausage pizza with a marinara stuffed crust, which the Foundation told him was a reward for good behavior, and the fact that it happened to be his favorite kind of pizza was just another stroke of incredible luck on his part. An anomaly who is a lot less lucky is SCP-2662, a teenage Cthulhu who just wants to be left alone so he can game in peace, but whose very existence results in the spontaneous formation of cults across the globe that will plot and kill to reach him and engage in worship. And for the record, he has no interest at all in engaging with any of these cults. The researchers on the SCP-458 case decided that he needed a little treat, and so they let him select a pizza from SCP-458. Fitting for his underwater home nation of Roulier, his pizza featured several large trout and deep-sea eels which were raw. He was quoted saying,
"Whoa, dude, this is crazy. I had no idea anyone outside of Carcosa Pizza sold this. It's my favorite."
Yet another satisfied customer.
That's good.
But what kind of pizza would be fit for God himself? The researchers wanted to know that, too. That's why they took the pizza to SCP-343, an extremely powerful reality warper who refers to himself as God. And for all we know, he actually might be. One indication of this is just how deeply insane his pizza order was. A huge pizza with seemingly every topping imaginable, with over 100 distinct foodstuffs identified in the mix. Though to be fair, SCP-343 was intent on sharing it with everyone else at the containment site too, so his omnibenevolence continues. Speaking of deeply benevolent creatures, SCP-999, the Tickle Monster, also got to have a turn on the pizza box. This is a true crossover that gets it right. Two of the most beloved anomalies in the Foundation roster, working together. Who knows how wonderful the results will be? Well, we do, because you're about to find out. The pizza was described as follows. Soft dough base smothered in decadent chocolate spread or ganache, layered with an array of assorted chocolates, chocolate chips, Hershey's Kisses, and Reese's Pieces. Scattered colorful candies like M&Ms and gummy bears across the top, drizzled with melted chocolate and sprinkles. I love SCP-999 as much as the next guy, but I will admit that pizza order makes me feel a little nauseous. Moving on, because just thinking about this is making me slip into a state of diabetic shock. From one 999 to another, the Foundation got a unique chance to test a very specific anomaly when one of the D-Class members of personnel began dying of renal failure. This summoned SCP-4999, someone to watch over us. An anomaly who will show up and share a last smoke with a dying person so that nobody ever has to die alone. The researchers decided to thank him for the valuable palliative care he provides by offering him a pizza of his choice from the never-ending pizza box, which was an extra-large, half-supreme, half-pepperoni pizza, which he shared with the dying D-Class. This turned out to be the exact kind of pizza that the D-Class had often shared with his girlfriend in happier days. The next test subject of the SCP-458 testing spree was the Death Knife, SCP-5175, and its wielder, an anime-loving security guard named Damien Lawrence Woodcock, haunted by the spirit of the long-dead Japanese samurai Kuroitanken Hanzo. Given that multiple consciousnesses with very different tests were at work here, the Foundation was curious as to how this would affect the empathic abilities of the never-ending pizza box. As you can probably expect from a card-carrying otaku, he summoned a large pizza with mozzarella cheese stuffed crust, a barbecue sauce base, bacon bits, bacon strips, ground beef, ham, pepperoni, sausage, and a dusting of crushed chili cheese Fritos. The spirit of Hanzo contributed the addition of teriyaki sauce. Strangely, not any kind of traditional Japanese condiment, but the modern fusion equivalent. This was something the spirit of Hanzo had developed a taste for after how much teriyaki chicken Damien had eaten from the food court in his downtime. Those two crazy guys. Gotta love them. And in the interest of gathering as much knowledge as possible, they even tested the pizza box on the Cuban leader Fidel Castro, just because he was around at the time and they were curious about what would happen. The result was a large, thick crust pizza covered in over a dozen varieties of cheeses. Castro really loves his fromage, it seems. Due to the particular nature of this anomaly, it has some of the most lax containment procedures of any SCP in the Foundation's entire roster. It has been given the Safe Class, and is currently situated in the Site-17 cafeteria, where any staff are allowed to access it without first seeking permission. However, the one threat that the box has proven is as a distraction from more important Foundation matters. As such, Dr. Del Marino appended a note to the never-ending pizza box's file, reading, "I would just like to remind all staff that just because we have a pizza box that can constantly create pizzas for you does not mean that you can just sit around and eat pizza all afternoon. If continued abuse of the box continues, coupled with reports of personnel gaining unhealthy amounts of weight, I may be forced to implement a mandatory physical training regimen following lunch hours." The idea of needing to do mandatory physical training after every lunch hour. I can't personally think of an anomaly that's much scarier than that. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-1550, Dr. Wondertainment's Custom Pets, Top 12
That'll be it for now, awesome fans. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and comment down below. Have a nice day, awesome fans. Bye.